What is good, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome to a brand new series, actually. This is going to be the pilot episode, part one, if you will. I don't know. I mean, we're going to have plenty of parts for this, but each part is going to be a different story, I guess, if you will. But so basically, this is the series, What is Heavy Metal?
What kind of stupid ass question is that?
We are going to be asking that question and seeing where it basically leads because there are plenty of questions within that single question that can take us on many avenues, different thoughts, different thought processes, different answers, just different subgenres, just everything, all the way down to different bands, different scenes, different everything, different emotions, like everything. The question is so loaded, it's like a Pandora's box. And we are going to be talking about that here, especially with the pilot episode, though. I think I'm going to basically kind of lay a little bit of the groundwork, I guess, or kind of give my retrospective of what is heavy metal. And then future episodes, we are going to be having just metalheads in general, band members from all different styles of bands of heavy metal, and just different angles on this question.
I am Jason Myers from the band Icarus Witch, and you are listening to the Kourse Metal Show, featuring Trevor Crash Knight, the next generation's voice of classic heavy metal.
Without further ado, let us jump into a little bit of what I think heavy metal is. Now, heavy metal is a obviously a metal genre or is a genre of music, and it consists, I guess, if you will, of certainly the blues of all kinds and some jazz elements. There, depending on which subgenre of heavy metal you're in, you're into all kinds of classical stuff. You're into soul stuff as well, soul music, funk music too. I would say definitely jazz and blues is the heaviest of the influences, especially the early stuff of heavy metal.
If you don't know the blues, you can't play rock and roll. Simple as that. You make pop music, and there's nothing wrong with pop music, but you ain't gonna be able to play rock and roll if you don't know your blues.
And when we talk about blues, we're talking about Robert Johnson. Me and Chris Elliott from 86 Bullets did a couple episodes on Robert Johnson, his importance to heavy metal and the blues in general. And then you also got like your Howlin' Wolves, your Muddy Waters, Lead Bellies, a whole different Delta blues, Chicago blues, all kinds of different stuff there, which I am a huge fan of. Whenever I take a break from metal, it's usually blues is what I go to and enjoy. But yeah, it's certainly, and then obviously with the blues, you have Elvis Presley. Then in the 80s, you had Stevie Ray Vaughan. I think, okay, so Elvis Presley, he did form the blues with rock and roll, if you will, because then you had some Little Richard going on as well during that time period. But Elvis did make it popular. He didn't invent it by no means, but he made it his own. He made it popular. And you could say the same thing for Stevie Ray Vaughan in the 80s. Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of made blues music cool again, or mainstream again, if you will, and made the guitar hero, I guess. At least that's how I view it, because obviously from I was born in 1992, so I did miss all of the hair metal, the glam metal, just the 70s, everything. Obviously, I missed all that. So I'm looking back on it from 19 at least say 2000 onward, because obviously when you're 2 years old or 8 years old, you don't really know what's going on. Sure, you have your influences here, like what I want to talk about, but you don't really know what the scene looks like. You don't know what's going on for the most part. But other than the music itself or the records themselves, and I think here, once you got past Stevie Ray Vaughan, then as far as blues music goes, there went a lot of contemporary stuff as well. Like Kenny Wayne Shepherd, big fan of him, and just in general, big fan of the blues stuff. And throughout all eras of blues, I can dig it all the way up until recent times here. And I don't think that's kind of like rock and roll in general or metal in general. I don't think it'll ever die, but certainly as a scene, or it is on life support as well for heavy metal. But that kind of leads me to the next question of what is heavy metal. So what are the origins? Like I said, you do have jazz and blues music, but as far as heavy metal itself, you do always have that question of chicken or the egg, which is, I guess, when you're talking about heavy metal, Sabbath or Led Zeppelin. And I would lean more towards Black Sabbath now because Led Zeppelin, you do get a whole a little bit more variety, if you will. Like, sure, there are like heavy metal elements in Led Zeppelin, but you do get some more hard rock feel to Led Zeppelin. But with Black Sabbath though, Ozzy era. Uh, Now I will say I'm not the biggest Ozzy era Black Sabbath fan. I'm more of a Dio era Black Sabbath or even Tony Martin. But for what Black Sabbath did, you can't deny the debut album, even though that is very heavily blues influence, and just Black Sabbath is just blues influence as well. But then by the time you get to like Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, they are starting to do more of the rock, like more of a Led Zeppelin type feel, I guess, like that kind of feeling of rock instead of say the debut or Masters of Reality and such like that. But those middle albums though of Black Sabbath are important for a reason. They helped construct what we now know of heavy heavy metal. But so many other bands though too. You have like Angel, you have Stars, from the late 70s. It's just it's so in such a short video here that what we're doing it's hard to really touch on every single thing. So if I do leave out a band or whatever, not my intention, but it's just what's coming to my mind here for my retrospective of or my review of what is heavy metal. So then you get to the 80s, and this is where my home is for heavy metal, with the hair metal.
Hey, now you speak my language here.
I know that's the thing with hair metal. Sure, people don't like it being called hair metal because obviously everyone has long hair. Usually, generally speaking, in heavy metal, like that is the look. For me, though, this is where it's at. Obviously, with everyone's age, the preference does change. I think 80s was the golden era for heavy metal, like because then you certainly have power metal beginning, you have thrash metal beginning, you have very early elements of black metal and speed metal. And then you have the hair metal, glam metal, sleaze metal, which is, if you want to break down hair metal, that's more AOR, glam metal, and sleaze metal in my book. But so yeah, because like I say on the channel, if you're a follower of the channel, that is what I was in the womb listening to Cinderella, Brittany Fox, as you can see behind me here, and like Poison, Kicks, Stevie Ray Vaughan even. But yeah, that was the norm in our family. Def Leppard even because my aunt was the biggest Def Leppard fan that I ever known. And so like every time I was up in my grandma's house, my aunt was there usually when I was up there as well. And she had Loverboy stuff, but that shit never stuck with me. The Loverboy albums, nah. All right, let's play some Def Leppard. I'm done with this. So I'm done with this Loverboy shit. I don't want to hear that. But they're a little bit too mainstream rock for me of the 80s. Because like everyone thinks I'm an 80s guy, which I am. Metal though. When you're talking about like 80s pop or just 80s rock in general, I don't care for that. All on the heavy metal side. Thrash, like when I was in high school, I was a big thrash guy. Still am, but as I got older, I started sticking more towards the hair metal side of things, power metal side of things. Because then we're talking thrash metal, like the big four. You have Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer, which are great bands. But like I was really into Testament too, Overkill, even like Sacrament, which we did talk about in our Christian video, three essential Christian metal albums. And like Death even, I touched on that. I touched on them more in recent years than I did in my high school days, but still like playing around with that type of stuff. But I certainly as time goes on, and even from high school on, I was like, you know what? am enjoying this hair metal. I'm liking the feeling of hair metal more. Like I'm always in a good mood, always laughing and stuff. So like that's just the perfect soundtrack to the life because that's what music is to people. You know, it's their soundtrack to life, their life, and more times than not, I'm always in a good mood. So that's why 90% plus of my collection is the hair metal, sleaze metal, glam metal type stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a huge thrash collection. I have a huge power metal, symphonic metal collection now that's starting to be worked up now here. And even a blues collection, like I said earlier. But the hair metal is home. That is where the nest is as far as the collection goes. The family always had Cinderella, Britney Fox, Poison in the family car, the cassettes. I even pulled out a couple cassettes here to show off. So here is one is the Stevie Ray Vaughan Brothers album, the last album actually that Stevie Ray Vaughan recorded. What is it? Family Style. That's what the album is. But we had all the Stevie Ray, like my dad's a real big Stevie Ray guy, and he had all the albums, the cassettes in the car as well. So we played that. And then here is Cinderella Still Climbing from 1994. So that's why this one does hold a. We had all of them. So like, but these are the only ones I really still have or just pulled out here in the cassette collection. And here's some Britney Fox Boys in Heat. And I swear I think I lost the insert Sally because I remember some of these cassettes were up in the attic as well. And I would hang out up there once in a while. And I remember I was like, this fucking Boys in Heat album cover is so cool. I don't know. And then now, like in the recent years, I'm seeing like a lot of the other hair metal channels and stuff. They're like, this sucks. Like this album cover sucks. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Not at all. This is like one of my favorite album covers of the 80s. But nonetheless, I'm bummed because that's one thing less that Michael Kelly can sign for me now, which sucks. And then the last one here, Kicks Midnight Dynamite. This was more like around the time I was like 10 or 12 when I started really like figuring out like buying stuff myself, like really starting to kind of get my own collection. And that leads me to the other point though is why like what is heavy metal and like why kind of is it on life support now? Uh, that's a loaded question, which we will try to hit on some of that is because like when I was 12, that's when I was starting to really because when I was young, I got into Makeup Kiss, which as a young kid, who doesn't get into Makeup Kiss when you're in the rock in general? So like I did have a couple of their greatest hits or a couple of their albums as well, like in my own thing. Because like my parents were never really big Kiss fans. They did like 80s Kiss, which I do prefer 80s Kiss now that I'm older over 70s Kiss any day of the week. But obviously, when you're young, you like the makeup, you like the gimmick of what they're doing. And the songs are simple. The 70s era songs are simple. So certainly helps with the preteen type deal or even teenagers as well. But for me, anyway, preteen. So then when I turn 12, 13, it's more of okay, I'm listening, starting to figure out like the radio, and then that was an easy test and answer for me, question and answer for me because and after like 2 weeks or maybe 2 months, and I'm being serious here, I was like, why are they playing the same fucking shit all the time here? Like they're playing the same 10 songs, the same 10 bands.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Like, why are they playing AC/DC so much and not Motley Crue, not Poison, not Cinderella? Like, what you guys call yourself a rock and metal, station, classic station, and you're not playing any of the stuff from the 80s, really? Like, other than like the very surface level bands of rock, hard rock, and because like even they would play Metallica once in a while, but they wouldn't play Megadeth.
Because I want to know whose ass to kick.
That was very strange to me because Megadeth, in my opinion, is the next biggest band behind uh Metallica as far as like thrash metal. Certainly thrash metal, but just heavy metal in general, kind of. Especially at that time because that would be what 2006-ish for me. So and definitely at that time too, metal or traditional metal was having a resurgence because obviously everyone knows from the 90s. Because in the 90s, you had grunge end up taking over from the early 90s, 91 on up to about 97, 96, 97. But then you also had death metal come out of Florida as well in the 90s. Then you also had, the new metal type deal at the end of the 90s. And is there another one? Butt I guess butt rocker, like whatever Nickelback and Creed is. But hey, I don't have an issue with Nickelback or Creed. Now, granted, I probably only have like two albums of Nickelback, but I don't hate them, but I don't love them. Like I'm not gonna, they're not the first band I'm gonna be like, oh my god, I gotta go see them or I gotta go listen to something here of Nickelback. No, but I don't hate them though either. But they're certainly not one that I gravitate to. But Creed, though, I will say I do like Creed. I do have their albums. But yeah, 90s was a weird time because you also had like that boy band stuff, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC.
What is going on?
Although I do enjoy Backstreet Boys from time to time because that was a band that my aunt really enjoyed, and so that holds a place in my heart. But NSYNC though, no, I'm not a fan of NSYNC. I'm not a fan of like the other ones that were really going on. And then obviously you had rap going on at the whole throughout the 90s that really kind of started taking over then as well because rock and metal was in such a weak point as far as the certain subgenres and bands. Like no fun 90s when it comes to rock and metal in that decade. And that's such a goddamn shame because 80s was 80 to me the real golden era of the golden era. So the biggest golden era of rock, I think, is like 82 to 92. But within that, I think 89 to 92 to 93 sometime. 89 to 92 is my golden era within the golden era, whether that would be hair metal, sleaze metal, even thrash metal and stuff. Like really good stuff. So, yeah, the 90s. So, we're now back to 2006 when I'm like 12, 13, 14. I'm starting to be like, okay, radio fucking sucks here. And I'm going to have to start my own collection and just find out bands on my own. So, YouTube actually helped me with that, with the recommendations and everything like that. But also, shout out to Tom's Music Trade, one of the first music places, record stores that I went to. He had CDs, he had records, he had like Brittany Fox Bite Down Hard on CD there for like a couple dollars. And I'm like, I never seen this before in my life. Well, obviously I was only like 14 then, but ever since then, I never seen another physical copy, original physical copy. Now there is reissues now on vinyl and stuff, but like he had all kinds of shit there. Awesome stuff for me, like when I'm young. And then also eBay helped too, because you're talking about 2006-ish. The hair metal stuff wasn't rare, or I mean, it was still rare and out of print, but there wasn't really a resurgence yet for that kind of stuff like it is now. And obviously, you're talking almost 20 years ago now.
What?
Which is absolutely crazy to me. But so, like, I'm buying stuff off eBay for $1 or for $5 or so, including shipping and stuff. So, like I could buy Kick stuff for $5. But that kind of leads me to the next answer is what kind of happened after, or what was happening in 2006 and then on, because like obviously I'm talking more about hair metal style people. That's one of the things why I think the metal scene in total is the shape that it's in, a kind of a bad shape here in America anyway. Now, yes, Europe, Japan, it is a little better. They still hold true to what they like. They don't care what is on MTV or the TV or radio in general and be like, oh, that's what's cool now. Okay, cool. But so like, because you had in 2006, 2005, you had what I call the second wave of sleaze metal or second wave of hair metal. Now, I know people say the second wave of hair metal is kind of like Firehouse or Warrant, Trickster, those kind of bands, like after like 89, which I don't know if I never looked at it that way because obviously I'm looking back in retrospect and people never called hair metal back in the hair metal days, pre 1995 even. So how can there be a second wave of something when no one even knew that that's what the genre was? So I kind of just put all the hair metal in from like 1986, 1987 to 1992. That's how I kind of, you know, order things in my collection and my thought process. So I always consider second wave of sleaze metal or second wave of hair metal as like the Crash diets of the world. Veins of Jenna, as you can see behind me. Great bands, who else? Johnny Burning, Dirty Penny from America, Wild Street. Very good bands from the mid 2000s, but band for but they just didn't obviously have the MTV behind them, radio play behind them like they should, like they would have in the 80s or the early 90s. So there wasn't, and that kind of disappoints me though too, because yes, I'm like 13, 14 when they're out and I'm trying to support them, but at the time CDs were like 10, 15 bucks. So I can't go out and support all of these bands that were doing this over from Europe yet and even in America at some level. So, what would you think a teenager would do that's not working, that only gets like so much money from their parents? And would you buy four of the original era 80s CDs off eBay or at the record store for $5 each? Or would you just buy one or two of the brand new stuff that you're not even sure that you like yet? Because like YouTube was very kind of in its infant days as far as like music goes and stuff like that. So you only got like maybe one music video from this new band. You couldn't listen to multiple stuff to be like, oh, is this something that I'm really gonna like, or is this just kind of like a single thing, or what have you? So what do you think a kid's gonna do? That's because that's how I ended up get with the whole collection I have now is a bunch of it. Now I never stopped collecting the hair metal stuff, the OG stuff, but certainly that really helped the ball rolling when I was like 13 years old and I never stopped. So dollar cost average, what you talk about in stocks and investing and stuff like that, dollar cost averaging, certainly. Because like I think it's kind of crazy that someone would spend $50 on, say, a Wild America from Tora Tora or something like that. And not that it's not a great album, but just I remember when I bought it for like $8, $10, it's 10, 15 years ago. So when you think of it like that maybe hurt the scene, but also too, I want to talk about the metal scene in general now. Like when I go to a show, an original show, I will say. So say if I go see, for example, Wild Street or Dirty Honey. Dirty Honey does actually really like pull a good amount of different age fans. So I can't really lump them into that, but that does kind of go into the question of or the answer of the original fans from the 80s that lived through that and even the 90s and such, people that are older than me. So I'm 32. So people that are over 45, 50 years old, they don't want to hear anything new. They don't want to hear anything original anymore. They only want to hear the same five songs from the same five bands.
You with that bullshit.
And I think radio plays a part in that. But now, because like my dad even like he goes out to shows with me and stuff like that's kind of like our thing. We love supporting the original. Like we go to a tribute. We don't do cover bands. We do go to tribute bands, which I appreciate to a certain extent. But now you're even getting like venues now charging 20, $25 for a tribute band. And I'm like, I'm just not gonna pay that money when I could just spend probably $10 more and go see Yngwie Malmsteen or, someone original. And I don't get that. I don't get that side of the fan either. Like, uh, okay, yes, the golden era was the golden era for a reason. I get it. I 100%. I'll talk about that shit all day. I'll out talk people that lived through that era on that shit. But if there is no, it just kills me that like Veins of Jenna, Dirty Penny, Wild Street never got like credit through the early 2000s to the mid 2000s. And even Wild Street's still around. Like they just released a new EP or a new album here recently. But Dirty Penny broke up. Veins of Jenna broke up after like two albums. But the singer Lizzie is in Cruel Intentions, which is another very good hard rock metal band. over in Europe now. So, I mean, it's kind of like a weird thing that's half the fans' fault, I think, because now, yes, as kids like my age and younger, there's way too many options as far as entertainment goes. So I do get that. I do get that part. It is very hard to put just anyone in the seats anymore and that just want to go out and enjoy live music. But at the same time, it doesn't help either when it's such a catch 22 for the bands, for like cover bands and just bands in general. Because yes, most of your fans are not diehards like me and you that are watching this. Because like I said, I've been collecting this shit for a while, or since pretty much all my life. But seriously, since I was like 13 years old, and like the deep cuts is where it's at for me all the time. I will not listen to Paradise City or Back in Black again because I just don't need to. It's been played out since I was 12, 13 years old, and I said, okay, that's enough of that. And I feel like there's always better stuff the more that you dig into a genre. Obviously, the stuff that comes on the surface, sure, it's sold platinum, many millions of albums, but is that really the best of the genre? And that's really any genre that you could think about. If you want to talk about, you know, just in metal, I would say certainly not. I am not 100% okay saying Motley Crue is the best of the hair metal genre. No, not at all. Not one album. Now, Motley Crue 1994, I would certainly hold a debate with somebody with that. Like that's a good effort. But come on. Girls was girls? No, get out of here. Dr. Feelgood? No. I mean, sure, it is good. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad album at all. But is it the best of the genre? Probably not. I am not okay with saying that. But I don't know. That's kind of like where my thought is. Now, we did kind of hit on a lot of things here in this episode, but that's kind of like where I want to talk about. Like, why isn't metal mainstream anymore? Is it a lot of it because of the fans? Now, the golden era of metal, of 80s metal, I think the big thing, yes, radio and MTV Play was a big help to that. But I think that kind of goes hand in hand with there was a big female audience in hair metal and glam metal and sleaze metal than any other metal before and maybe even after, to be honest with you. That's something to really ponder there. But I think at the same time, that goes hand in hand with it being mainstream and on TV, because obviously it gets in front of more people's eyes, and girls is the next part in that. And I think that just works kind of together, hand in hand. But that kind of makes me think though now though too, because the last 5, 10 plus years, there's been a lot of bands with female fronted vocalists. And I just feel like there would be more female fans at shows than what I would see based on that alone. I think I kind of, when I think about this, I'm like, you would think that would kind of take the place of MTV or whatever to get women into the genre of heavy metal, seeing that other women are in the band or fronting the band. So, but that doesn't really seem to be working either, kind of. Now, I am talking about specifically like the 80s hair metal type crowds. But I mean, I've been to like other shows too of, the Slipknots and stuff like that. Just other style of subgenres of metal. And I'm kind of just like disappointed too, because like thrashy type thrashy style bands or the real heavier side of things and like those crowds, I mean maybe it's just Pennsylvania, I don't know, but it's just crazy because I guess technically we are a country and rap now area. Back in the day we had it all. Like back in the 80s we had Swizzles, Hammerjacks down the road. Baltimore's like within 45 minutes of here. So like we had like all the places. I remember my dad saying, "Yeah, Overkill was here in York." You know, yeah, just naming all these bands, Autograph, like crazy shit, Kicks like all the time. Remembers seeing Paris seeing Poison before they were Poison when they were Paris. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think about that and how just in a short 30 years it's flipped on its head and there's doesn't seem to be anything, even like on LA in LA, the strip, like no one knows what that looks like anymore. But does that kind of lead into this question of is there too many subgenres in heavy metal? Now, on the surface, I would say no, or maybe yes. But then the more you think about it, no, because I enjoy more than just one subgenre of metal. Power metal, thrash metal, you know, hair metal, death metal. I can get into some black metal once in a while. I don't know. I don't traditional metal, I guess now is a actual thing. Acid metal, I just found out about. Shout out to Sabir. But I I don't think that's the issue, really. Too many subgenres, but does this different subgenre, the fans of each subgenre, kind of isolate themselves though, to where they're like, nah, fuck hair metal, that's pussy shit, or I don't, or are fans that are hair metal fans are like, oh no, Megadeth's way too heavy for me, or they or Death's way too heavy for me. I don't know, or is it just not giving it a real chance, or just I don't know. I don't have the answers here. But that's kind of like what the series is going to be about. Asking people these kind of questions, people from bands, other metalheads, just to hear. And I want to hear what your guys' answers and questions are, even too, because I think not having a scene anymore, a real scene, certainly hurts a lot. But where could the scene come from now? Because like I said, there was a second wave of hair metal in the mid 2000s and it was awesome. I remember that shit. And I just it was just no one really supporting it. So it is there. It's still here. I mean, the last I've been so impressed the last 10 years of bands that came out of all subgenres. I've been so impressed. And but what does the next 10 years look like if there's no one coming out to the shows? Is it just going to be people just making singles, just making EPs, making albums, and not really doing shows because only 10 people want to show up? That's the question. Like I guess that's the final question that I'm gonna ask you. What does the next 10 years look like in metal? Do you think, because it feels like we're kind of struggling now. Well, we had been struggling, if you will, the last 10 years, but I still see great record labels signing people, like Frontiers, Paris Records, like, and to name Napalm Records, to name just a few, like all kinds of good record companies still out there signing people. So I don't think there's not necessarily an avenue of that, but where is the promotion? What is the secret ingredient here? What are we missing? What's the one ingredient that will kind of domino to making everything else better? That's kind of where we're at. What's the question there, or what's the answer? So, guys, that pretty much wraps up the pilot episode, the first episode of What is Heavy Metal. And I think I kind of answered a broad, I gave a broad answer to a lot of this, and maybe the rise and fall of heavy metal too. And so I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But if you enjoy what we do here, we love bringing the unknown and forgotten metal albums and metal bands from the past, present, and future. We love bringing them here on the channel, talking about them, giving them the due attention that they so most certainly deserve. And just if you enjoy that, please subscribe. Please hang out with us. Join the community here. Party with us. And until next time, guys, stay out of that collateral damage. And if you guys enjoyed this video, check out this one right here.
Is that something you need to be able to sing the blues, to have experienced hardship in your life?
Well, it helps because it gives the truth to the hard expressions. See, if you have understand it and lived it, it do give truth to the expression of the heart. Otherwise, you can only sing about what you think it might be.